Hi, good afternoon. I am Kadeen Smith, the project coordinator for the Caribbean Future E-Forum. Welcome to the third episode of our webinar series, the Carib Web Dialogue. This is the third in a new series of Caribbean Future Forum webinars, which kicked off on Friday, 28th August. Our first webinar brought together young thinkers and senior UN officials. It focused on what the Sustainable Development Goals will mean for the people in the Caribbean. Then our second webinar was held on the 30th of September, and it focused on youth and environmental sustainability. We looked at ways in which the Caribbean as a region can combat climate change and sustainably use our oceans and terrestrial ecosystems. Today's webinar will focus on youth and the environment. In particular, the webinar will explore the roles that the youth of the Caribbean can play in addressing environmental issues. We're going to be looking at the role of youth in creating environmental awareness, how we can strengthen the participation of youth in environmental protection, improvements that can be made in Caribbean environmental education, and also the role of social media in learning about the environment. I would now like to introduce our speakers. Please help me to welcome Kemba Jaramogi. She is an environmentalist who focuses on transforming lives through environmental educational programs. She has been involved in conservation work since age 9, and she now serves as the technical director of the Fons Amandis Community Reforestation Project. Kemba's contribution to TNT has not gone unnoticed. In August 2014, she was the proud recipient of the National Youth Awards and winner in the environment category. And in 2003, she was a proud recipient of the top 20 Stars of Tomorrow Awards in the environment category. Welcome, Kemba.
Thank you.
And our second panelist is Mr. Jonathan Barkan. He is a civil engineer who, after working 3 years with a large Canadian firm internationally in Canada, Greenland, and Panama, he returned home to Trinidad and Tobago, where he founded a local company called Vetiva TT. Vetiva TT specializes in ecological engineering solutions, and in early 2014, Jonathan also co-founded a non-profit organization called the I Am Movement, which hosted the People's Climate March in 2014 and has set up a program with the Serval Learning Center in Cascade to engage with youth and inspire and empower them through sports, art, music, and environmental awareness. Welcome, Jonathan. Our third panelist is Letitia Parkinson. She is the Communications and Public Relations Officer at the Caribbean Youth Environment Network in Trinidad and Tobago. Letitia's passion for the environment began at the sixth form level, where she began studying environmental science and realized the importance of the environment to everyday life. She is currently reading for her BSc Biology major and Environmental Natural Resource Management minor at the University of West Indies. Our fourth and final panelist is, welcome Letitia, Our fourth panelist is Mr. Jeremy Ramjan. He is a lower sixth student at the Naparima College with a long-term involvement in the environmental club at the college. He has been actively involved in beach cleanups and other related conservation efforts, including work with the UNESCO Association of Trinidad and Tobago. So without further ado, I would like to give word to our speakers as they share with us their ideas on how youth of the Caribbean can become more involved in protecting our environment. Kemba.
Hi, welcome. So I'm from the Fonsamon Community Reforestation Project. That's how you pronounce it. So through our efforts in Fonsamon, one of the things that we often focus on is not just working with community groups. We see the direct work. Yes, we can work with communities, change communities. However, we see the importance of working with youth and children as well. So it's not just say we're going to, reach young people when they're already struggling to find out, okay, where they want to be socioeconomically or what they want to choose for jobs, career, researchers, and give them that sort of grounding before they get into, the field of work or the field of formal studies. So, when we talk about our role as young people in sharing the message, I think we have the opportunity to create innovative ways, innovative ideas. Look at ways that we can speak to ourselves and not typically. I mean, this is a good way. I mean, it's online. It's something that a lot of us are. Web technology, phone technology, we have those things at our disposal now. So it's something that we can use a lot, which kind of skips and jump across to the role on social media. One of the things that I have been doing for the last 4 years is being very active on Facebook. I have a Facebook page with the Fonzamon Reforestation Project and a group page that allows people to post. I think people are still kind of cautious about posting. They think, well, okay, I think I might be judged for this or judged for that. But I always say, it's the important thing is sharing the message. Sometimes people don't like it or comment, but then they see me and they say, oh, I saw you post that really good post. Or they might share it on their wall and then discuss it within their private grouping. But I think sometimes they shy away from that massive audience in terms of commenting because they don't feel that they're professional enough to make a profound statement. However, I want to urge everybody, you don't need to be an environmental guru to have a say or to have an input or to make a change. Your change could be very small. Just today I received a Facebook comment saying, I posted something about plastic. Like, why should we use something that we use once should be so easily thrown away, like a wrapper or something that is just plastic, it's just one use. And someone said to me on the post on Facebook, can we really get rid of plastic in our everyday lives? I said we can try by reducing it, our demand for it slowly and slowly. We can't just immediately switch off like that. But just the information sharing and people being aware of the negative impacts, being aware of the negative impacts of removing trees from the hillside, being aware from the negative impacts of polluting the beaches. Those are the kind of messages, so when people get out there and they put things to practice or they put at the head of a company or resource managing, then they know exactly what is the effect of their actions. When we're talking about strengthening participation of youth in environmental programs, one of the things that we want to look at is their access. Very often, youth often gets invited to forums or meetings, and sometimes it's felt like if we're just there to make quota. And I've said this before, and I know people will agree with me that as young people I've been doing this, I've been part of youth councils, youth environmental, organizations, school groups, this kind of things. But if we really want to say youth can get a chance, then we need to create opportunities. And it doesn't mean that, okay, young people, you want a chance, go and create your own opportunities, but it must be institutionalized. It must be seen as important. We must have environmental programs within the school curriculum, not in a way to force you to learn environment, but in a way for you to enjoy the learning about environment and the practices. So I think we should really, really, really try to refocus on how we operate, how we integrate these things, how we implement standards within our buildings. Instead of having bottled water, have water dispensers and put a sign by it. In this way you're reducing plastic. If you plant a tree in front of every office, say, yes, this is to provide shade. When we go and wine on the road for Carnival, everybody wants a big tree to shelter under when you're tired. So, it's always a way how you can make people realize how important things are when that time comes. And not just always being so serious, but, everybody who plays mass, where do you have lunch? You have lunch in a park under a big tree. Yet, after Carnival, a designer or an architect decides, okay, we need to build this building, and the first thing you do is clear land and cut down trees. So, we need to show that relationship of how things are important and how it impacts all of us and how we benefit, So that is what I have to share for now.
All right, thank you, Kemba, and we will move quickly along to Jonathan.
Thank you, Kemba. Thanks for having me. There's a stronger feeling of need amongst youth now and desire to see good environmental solutions because there's recognition that we've been exploiting and destroying our planet for so long and have gotten ourselves into a bit of a tricky place, which has become critical. Therefore, youth are much quicker now to show their support for authentic environmental projects, innovations and solutions which are not mere greenwashing, which has become so prevalent in society today. In the professional sense, youth are innocent and uncorrupted and are less easy to fool. They are not yet compromised like many older folk who are forced and bound to more conservative thinking due to conflict of interest with their jobs and lifestyles, or simply because they have grown up and become established in certain mindsets for so long that it is hard to change and think otherwise. Kids and youth today who don't have these compromises yet, by default, cannot lie to themselves as easily, and are therefore more able to build up much more sound and steadfast morals and values, which serve as a foundation and are much more difficult to compromise. And they are therefore the most critical and vital shapers of tomorrow, as their minds are fertile to think of creative solutions and projects to solve the world's many challenges. We are in a time now when so much of the largest and most rapidly spreading movements are really happening through trending. As critical masses of population tap into certain topics and discussions, everyone starts becoming more interested, including the average Joe and Mary. While we have seen this effect with respect to many silly and useless subjects, we have also seen mass trending and mainstreaming of important, interesting, and genius ideas. This is the power of social media and also especially of youth, because youth are so tapped into social media and the latest technologies and trends, because they are being born into and fully growing up in the digital era and ever faster internet. The strength of the movement will really come in uniting, with both pros and cons attached. Today we have become a society which depends very much on what others think, and therefore we are always looking to others for support and validation of our ideas. This is in part because we have become so interconnected, and while it has its downfalls, it also has many good aspects, such as we are loosening our need to dominate and be right, and are more open to listening to one another, opening our minds to alternatives and engaging in debate. What this means to say, though, is that the mainstreaming of environmental awareness and protection, factual and non-biased information, and optimism towards realistic solutions which already exist will create a platform and network where both environmentalists and the average person can feel safe, secure, and inspired to participate in further raising awareness and joining and becoming the solution. And those who sit on the outskirts in denial, avoidance, and ignorance are inevitably coaxed to engage with important environmental information and are invited to join also in seeing the solutions and becoming part of them. The Caribbean, small island developing states are especially susceptible to what the effects of climate change would be, and therefore it is in the direct interest of the Caribbean youth to engage with these issues, as their own futures and that of their children stand the risk of being so greatly affected by it. There are several main environmental and social economic issues on which Trinidad and Tobago and much of the Caribbean is lagging behind, which makes it clear we really are still developing states. However, they also represent incredible opportunities for us to really rise up and become better versions of ourselves, and greatly improve our overall security, and especially in the face of a changing climate and volatile economy. And in their correct implementation would undoubtedly have positive social and economic impact by employing many people in dignified jobs for the improvement of the nation. These main issues that I can quickly identify are the waste situation. The excessive consumption and no recycling is leading to overloaded landfills, which are now beyond capacity, where in the meantime the technology and management programs have been perfected elsewhere in the world for circular economy and closed-loop systems, such as recycling and waste to energy. Renewable energies. This is a whole other discussion by itself. But by reinvesting present-day resources from fossil fuel income into a renewable energy landscape, Trinidad and Tobago can create an energy-secure future for itself, for when resources are in fact depleted, and also set itself up for a diversified economy when this time comes, with greater potential to attract tourists and investors and become a leading country in the effort to go green. And last issue is public transport. Without a good public transport system, roads become very heavily congested and only continue to be more so, with very much personal resources spent on vehicles, time lost in traffic daily, and environmentally polluting carbon emissions. A railway system, for example, has been discussed for Trinidad and Tobago running north, south, and east-west. Rail systems are so effective because they are incredibly reliable and can greatly boost citizens' empowerment to travel quickly using public transport and relieves vehicle congestion on the roads and air-polluting carbon emissions. There is a quote by Colombia's Gustavo Petro, which I think is quite powerful in summarizing the social economic status of a country, and indeed where it has the potential to be. A developed country is not a place where the poor have cars. It is where the rich use public transport. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Jonathan. I'm going to turn over to Letitia now.
Thank you. Three of the topics are the role of youth in creating environmental awareness, improving Caribbean education, environmental education, and the role of social media in learning about the environment. Before you can create awareness for a cause, you need to be educated about that cause. Social media is the bridge between the two, in that you can use it to learn more about a cause, but also to create awareness for the cause. What does that mean for us? It means that we are at an advantage. We live in the age of modern technology, which puts the world at our fingertips. Knowledge is power, they say, and access to the internet provides access to a vast quantity of knowledge, and thereby a vast quantity of power. Power to change the world. However, while we have access, there's a gap. That gap is often misunderstanding and mismanagement of that power. I'll give one example, which will effectively answer the 3 questions and show how we can use this power properly. On November the 13th, the Caribbean Youth Environment Network Trinidad and Tobago chapter will be hosting a youth-led capacity building forum entitled Connecting Climate Change and Youth. You might be wondering how this is an answer to all the questions. Well, the forum brings together young professionals in climate change policy and environmental sectors with young people from various disciplines. This is not only about knowledge sharing, but also about inspiring youth to make the difference that we can make. We are trying to organize a live stream of the event, and if that becomes a reality, then this is where the knowledge sharing and inspiring events, connecting climate change and youth, goes beyond the lecture room 1 of the Institute of International Relations and reaches the entire world with only a few clicks. How amazing is that? But it can get even better. The Caribbean Youth Environment Network could have a forum where the presenters comprise of young people from across the region, and in fact, we have had such forums in the past, but in the future, the forum could be online in the form of a Google Hangout in order for young people of the Caribbean to engage in environmental education and awareness through the use of social media. The possibilities are endless. The opportunities are limitless, whether you're young or old. In a primary, secondary, tertiary, or trade institution, you have equal access to environmental education through the use of social media. Now we are getting to the really heavy stuff. That is, strengthening participation of youth in environmental protection. Many opportunities are presented to environmental organizations, such as the Caribbean Youth Environment Network, to attend various conferences, debates, forums, and the like, to represent the voice of the Caribbean youth. But for some reason or the other, the voice of the youth never seemed to make it to the ears of the policymakers. It has come to my attention that whenever there is communication between young people and policymakers or people of influence, if we do not echo their sentiments, our words fall on deaf ears. This, of course, is understandable, since many are of the opinion that youth means inexperience, youth means ignorance. But actually, what youth means is freedom. This quote is for all the policymakers, all the people of influence, and everyone, young and old, who believe that young people have no right in big people's business. This was taken from an article in CYN's online magazine, EcoLife, entitled, Why Should They Listen to Us? Youth, the Essence of Change, written by Rihanna Gonzalez. So why do we fight? Why do we stand up for change? It is our future, and it is worth fighting for. We want to see a positive change, and we believe that we can do it. Our generation of young people see no boundaries, no limits, no obstacles. We stimulate our imagination and think outside the proverbial box. In fact, we destroy the box. Ultimately, we have nothing to lose but everything to gain. And this, my friends, is the freedom of youth. Environmental protection is not big people's business. It is everybody's business. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Letitia. And moving on, we will go to Jeremy.
Thank you very much, Ms. Katie Smith. Before I begin, I'd just like to say a quote from Vladimir Lenin. He said, "Give me one generation of youth, and I'll transform the whole world." The world we know today is a seemingly unsustainable place, much unlike the world 50 years ago, and it seems that the problems are only deteriorating and becoming worse. Unless we, the human population, with special emphasis on the youth, derive seemingly possible solutions. Mahatma Gandhi once said, "Earth provides enough to satisfy every man's needs, but not every man's greed." And so I believe that we must evaluate our priorities and see that if going in the direction of industrialization, globalization, and technological advancement is not being done at the expense of our environment. So the only way to make Earth a better place for future generations is to incorporate the ideas of the youth. Because most importantly, they would be the ones who would have to bear the brunt of the repercussions and ramifications, whether inadvertently or not, bequeathed to them by the earlier generations. Youths make up a significant part of the population of the world, and as such, their views should be appreciated and considered because, take it from me, they do have many. They can make their influence felt by calling political leaders to account for their long-term environmental consequences of their decisions through transparency and accountability. Young people with a stake in the more distant future are especially well placed to promote environmental awareness because certain anti-environmentalist ways of thinking have not yet been entrenched in their minds. And even though it's becoming seemingly less ubiquitous in our society, it's still there, even though it's decreasing at a slow but steady rate. And so they would be able to approach these ideas with new and different ways of thinking. Young people would easier gravitate to something they perceive to be entertaining and fun. So the real reason of promoting environmental awareness could be secondary to them, but still at the forefront for the professionals, and so the job gets done and the youth gets involved, which I think is a win-win situation for everyone. Also, many young people nowadays yearn for a sense of mental stimulation outside the classroom, and this can consequently come from environmental projects such as cleanup campaigns and youth camps to encourage green innovations and initiatives that would strengthen the participation of youth in environmental protection. Young people are eager to learn about ways that they can improve the environment through community service projects and after-school groups that provide opportunities for them to learn and give back to the society and their fellow peers. Young people have a habit to follow other young people, and so if we incorporate many youths into a specific drive and environment-focused activity, you would see that more people would begin to gravitate towards it and would try to pattern the behaviors and attitudes of environmental awareness and would even begin to participate in this protection. Young people have the enthusiasm to create and implement projects which would cultivate a sense of environmental ownership and responsibility, ensuring that sustainability efforts will continue in the future. However, if we want the youth to be aware of the environment, they must first be taught about the environment through either the mass media or their school's curriculum. As such, I believe the educational system should be more centered on a topic that is so pervasive right now through the entire globe, which is environmental protection. And so certain activities could be planned to make learning exciting, as well as the development of sustainability education and community service programs. Learning is surely not limited to the classroom, and so outdoor activities could occur more frequently to help them in becoming one with nature and experiencing it firsthand, which would definitely have a huge impact on them, which would be far greater than anything they could ever learn from a textbook. Within the world that we currently live, we have reached the zenith of technological advancement, and as such, the use of social media in our society has become quite predominant. The internet is seen as the key to priceless and a vast amount of information that would aid in our green initiatives, and social networking sites such as Facebook, Twitter, and WhatsApp can play a pivotal role in spreading the message about environmental awareness due to the easy user-friendly interface, which is like second nature to most young people. Development of websites devoted to sharing the youth's perspective on the environment and youth ambassador teams to educate their peers about environmental protection and awareness could play an important role in strengthening the participation of youth in preservation. Therefore, social media can be used to learn about the environment and also to transmit certain messages about being environmentally friendly. I mean, just imagine, one post on Facebook could acquire over 1,000 likes in less than an hour, and then this message can be shared and forwarded to so many other people. And so certain unorthodox, seemingly unorthodox forms of learning and sharing information can be so profound and have such a wide and vast, very effective way of strengthening the youth's participation, especially in environmental awareness. Therefore, being a youth, I believe that it is my duty to share with everyone that I encounter the importance of preserving our environment, because after all, this is our home and we should all want to make our home a better place for us and also for the future generations. So I believe that we must change the way in which we think and behave and try new ideas to see where that would take us, because if we constantly do the same thing and expect different results, it's not going to happen, and Einstein defined that as insanity. So recently I had the opportunity to travel to Europe and see some of the more green cities in the world, such as Austria and Germany, and it's really amazing to see how the youth they are so involved in environmental awareness and how their activities are so important to them. And I think that's something that we should try and implement here. Because the human capital of the world has the responsibility of preserving the environment, because self-preservation cannot be our most important goal. So I'd like to end with this quote. Those in the world who want the world to stay the same are those in the world who don't want it to stay. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeremy, and thank you again to all of our panelists. So now we would like to turn the floor over so that we can have some questions. And I know that the online participants may be experiencing some difficulties posting questions. What you can do as an alternative is like us on Facebook at Caribbean Future Forum. You can send your questions to our inbox there. But in the meantime, we'd like to invite our offline audience to ask any questions that they may have to our panelists.
I'll go.
Thank you.
First of all, on behalf of the Energy and Environmental Disaster Unit from UNDP Trinidad, thank you very much for taking part in the webinar and continue the good work that you all are doing. My question relates to the upcoming climate conference in Paris. What are some expectations that the youth or any of the panelists may have specifically for SIDS coming out of that conference?
Would you like me to begin?
Since you have
Okay.
a conference.
No, go ahead. Would you like?
Sure.
Yeah, I think that Letitia might have some answers to that.
Well, okay, first of all, a lot of young people will be attending, right, which is great. There are a lot of different organizations providing opportunities for you to attend. Like I said, and like Ms. Kemper said before, it's very important that they don't just have us there just to fill seats, just to be numbers, just to be faces, right? And usually the people that, okay, how it goes most times when there's negotiations, international negotiations, the people with the most money, they really get all the say, right? And as small island developing states, we will feel much of the effects of climate change. So it's really important that our leaders push the agenda. They really need to step out there. Well, hopefully, we are not an afterthought. We are not last to be chosen. We are not, by the way, there are those people there, we and other people who are most vulnerable to the effects of climate change would really be considered. They would really say, okay, you know what? It's time to just stop all this talking and really decide, we're going to do something. We're really going to make the change. I hope that it's not just another conference that I read all these million things they plan to do and nothing gets done. I hope something actually happens.
I would also like to make a comment. One of the things, because I've also attended SIDS in Mauritius in 2005. And one of the things that we find is that in youth conferences, we commit to certain things, but then when we get back to our respective countries, there is no way to get those activities started because there is nothing to tie you to it. There is no sort of institution to sort of support those decisions to follow up. So one of the things I would really like to see, because in the overall SIDS, one of the main objectives is education, sharing of innovation and technologies. And if we have to do that, we need to look at if youth's supposed to be involved in this, then if we want to get that really implemented and make a difference, then we should see it be implemented in the schools. Not to say something that's supposed to be rigorously tested in CXC or CAPE or whatever it's called these days, but something that we can participate to the curriculum formation. Because very often curriculums are set by people who have no understanding of how young people tend to utilize these curriculums, and people who are already existing doing different types of environmental education and know how youth are receptive towards it. For example, I've done different youth educational programs focusing camps. Every year we have camps on different themes. On solar energy, we got some energy kits from Smart Energies, where have different, wind, solar, and also the hydro kits. So then the kids are interactively learning, and seeing. One time I did a session with a kid and teaching him about, solar, the ice cap melting. We don't have, that in Trinidad, but we had a big block of ice and we put it in water and we watched the ice melt. So, it's the type of education that you can see practical, sort of examples, not the formal write a book. Somebody's commissioned to write a book who's nowhere within our category. Somebody's commissioned to develop this and we're not there, we're not consulting, and we're not the main drivers. And I think we have a lot of young people who are qualified, who have experience, field and technical and theoretical, to come up with these solutions. And I think I want to see financing backing those sort of way forward objectives.
Yeah. Thank you, Kemba. While we're on the topic of the COP21 Climate Change Summit, I just want to actually bring to attention, for those of you who aren't aware, but last year, a really amazing effort was made worldwide to have the People's Climate March in a pre-summit which took place in New York City for 3 days, where world's leaders all came together, but they weren't coming together to actually make decisions. It was sort of a pre-discussion, but it was still very important. And this was an event that was planned proper 6 months to a year in advance by the organizing teams in New York City, and they began reaching out to the world and saying, find the event closer to you. If there's not an event, would you like to create it? And that led to over 2,626 events taking place worldwide on the same day when leaders met, which I think is incredibly powerful when we think about global consciousness and everybody thinking together on the same issue. And so with regards to COP21 in Paris now, and then just to tie into your mention of small island developing states, since we are so easily affected by the potential effects of climate change, it's in the direct interest of the populations of the Caribbean states to sort of get involved with this and to, forgive me for saying, but for want of better words, not wait for the leaders. The leaders, of course, are going to be the ones to make the decisions on top, but it's really going to come from the population to sort of make those moves to get them to shift. And so I really think it was genius of those organizers last year to have this event a year in advance. Because what that really did is that sort of set the momentum of the world to see that the world can stand together, and to get event organizers to realize that they can do events, because the real important event is going to happen this year in Paris. And so while world leaders are arriving in Paris for COP21, the climate march is scheduled to happen again on November 29th. And I think it's going to be really exciting for them to arrive and see that the world is watching really closely. Because I believe, the last major summit, Copenhagen 2009, was a baffling failure in the sense of leaders meeting for 12 days and not a whole lot happening and just being like, what just happened? It took the environmentalists to be like, what just happened? And then let the rest of the world know what just happened. But I think that's why everyone is really... when I say everyone, I'm talking about the incredible community that I'm aware of that is really preparing for this event. And if you look at it, if you dissect that community, I can guarantee you the majority of it is probably youth. There's a lot of very conscious older people that are participating, but the movements themselves are organized by youth. This is a youth thing. And it's not because older people are not capable and they don't want to join in. They do. It's just that they're part of a much older generation that has lived a much longer life where this was not an issue. So their brains are not formed to think about these things. They've developed their careers and their lifestyles into a life that doesn't have to take into account these things. That's why it's the youth that are so important in making it move. And so for those of you guys watching, just a little heads up, we are doing it again in Trinidad and Tobago this year. We're aiming for it to be much bigger, and I'd really like to reach out to all the rest of the Caribbean and small island developing states to say, look for the event closest to you. If you don't find it, be the organizer. And let's do this. COP21.
Well, I would just like to add that we know that climate change and global warming is something that is of paramount significance and importance within our society. And even though a lot of young people know about it, they don't seem to take interest in it. So I think that it would be important for them to have a shift in their mindset and their attitude so that they can really see how the environment is going to affect them later on in society. and then see the link that it would make to them and their children. And so I think that would make a greater effect on them, and then that would catalyze change, which I think is desperately needed right now.
Okay, thank you.
We have some questions on Facebook. The first one is, first of all, great job in the webinar. Question to any of the panelists: what are some strategies that can be used to translate support of youth from social media to real action? And this is the first one. And the second one is how we get the environmental trend in young people leaving social networks to act with a greater impact on reality.
To engage with youth on Facebook, one of the things in terms of managing pages, if somebody is managing a Facebook page, you need to be committed to that and committed to responding to comments and so on. Because most of the times if you have too large of a Facebook following and somebody asks a question and nobody answers, then they feel like their questions fall on deaf ears. So I work endlessly and tirelessly to give responses. Now, 2 years ago, I was posting information about my summer camp, and a young man from Belmont, I can't remember the secondary school he was in, he was like, "This is real interesting, I want to join in." I was like, "Yes, come on Monday." And he started on Monday, and I was just like, the post was on the Saturday, and the Monday he came out to work for me for the entire week. It was a volunteer position, which he knew nothing about in terms of getting a stipend, but at the end of it he did. He didn't do it for money, he didn't do it for anything like that. But sometimes it's just having the opportunities to engage with. Not all the time. If we post a message, we would have something to follow up with it, to say, okay, there's a direct project to join in. And very often we must be aware that a lot of people, they could only volunteer on a weekends. Some of the organizations only work during the week. Some organizations only work during the weekends. So I think people can probably be a little more understanding about those things in terms of opportunities, and probably work on club. I know you are in secondary school, so you all have environmental clubs. And environmental clubs could then, ask the principal for permission to leave during school hours to attend certain things. It goes hand in hand. I don't think at this stage we should really be looking at a one way or one direction approach, because we have to meet somewhere in the middle as the service providers and volunteers or people who want to get into youth initiatives.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to say that so Kemba has just outlined very much the sharing of important information, such as important projects, and directly reaching out to people to engage, people who are conscious and want to engage, and that's tremendously important. And while you also say importantly that it's not a one-pronged approach, we have to think about how to target the whole population, so other approaches as well. And so for anyone interested in really trying to use social media and so on to create environmental change, there's a really interesting concept that I came across recently just about sparking social change. And that's why I spoke a little bit in my speech about trending, because trends have such a powerful effect, and often they can be on very silly issues, but nonetheless, because a million people watch them, you watch them, and that's the effect of trending, which is where social media is very, very powerful. And so reaching out directly to that population that already has that passion and fire inside of them to go to environmental activities and events is incredibly important to give these youth that opportunity. But at the same time, very much of the population that is just not engaged with it for whatever reason. They didn't grow up among it. They're in a profession like nothing wrong with it, but beauty or something else that just or cosmetics, it just doesn't really have anything to do with the environment. They think to themselves, it has nothing to do with me. But at the same time, if you speak to them and ask them, do you think we should be doing this environmental activity? Do you think we should be doing this march? They're like, yeah, fantastic. We all know we need it. So you definitely have their support. And so this concept of sparking social change, if anybody is really interested in learning more about it, there's an interesting book called Nudge, which is about nudging, which is literally a social technique to sort of spark social change. And I'll just give you a really little interesting example of what a nudge is. And when you hear it, I think you'll be like, okay, this is worth looking into. Is back in England, like not too long ago, in the last decade or so, as I understand it, they had a problem with people consuming too much energy. And they were really reaching out, trying to do awareness campaigns. Listen, guys, we don't have enough energy. We need to turn off your lights more, turn off your heating more, etc. Typical. You might get about 5 or 10% response. Nobody's really listening. Everyone's too busy. It's not that they don't care, it's just that they're too busy. They're running out the door. They can't think about it. So the concept of a nudge is basically a very simple technique that is creative, doesn't require huge commitment financially or mentally, emotionally on the offset, but nonetheless, just planted there can spark a social change just because it comes into the person's awareness. So what some creative person decided to do was on everybody's electricity bill to put a little smiley face system where you have a sad face, a sort of a medium sad face, an average face, a little bit of a happy face, and a really happy face. And based on where you stood compared to the average, if you got your bill and you were way below average and you're consuming way too much, you got a sad face. If you're just a little bit below, you got a little bit of a sad face. If you're average, you got average. And what do you think that did? People start to get their bills. They see a sad face on it. They think to themselves, I don't want to be sad. Like, I want to be at least average. Everyone wants to be at least average. And so what do you think happened? People overnight began to be like, I'm going to try. Like, I want to get a smiley face on my bill, you know? And that is just an example. They're all different. You can think of completely different nudges. But that's just a little example of a small idea that is creatively thought. In a sense, it's a type of marketing. But most marketing is, when you go to school in marketing, is how do you make people buy more, which is not exactly what environmentalists are interested in. But nonetheless, it's a similar concept of a small idea that can create and spark a social change. So, anybody really interested in working in sort of online, trying to spark social change and so on, that book Nudge is interesting. And there's other people who are actual social scientists really picking up on this, and you can read articles about it and so on. Because this is just from the point of view of really trying to reach the full population. There are those who already engage with the issue, but how do you reach those guys out there who I'm certain actually care about it? And if you ask them to do a little formula, they will say they care about the environment, but they are not yet cluing into it because they have 5 kids and they have X, Y, and Z to deal with, and it's just they're not capable. So they need something small to sort of plant that in their awareness and make it easy for them. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Letitia?
Yes, all good comments they make. They really said it all right. I agree with Jonathan in terms of trending. That is a great way, especially young people love to do stuff that everybody's doing. It's fun, it's cool. You know, you want to be part of the in crowd, right? So that's a great way to translate social media campaigning into actual reality. Another thing I'd like to point out is, have you heard of the Action 2015 campaign? That is a fantastic example. It's people all over the world working together for one thing, right? But it's not really like you think of the whole world. It's where you are, in your country. You are doing a campaign. You are trying to encourage your leaders to really, take action in 2015. In terms of, with regards to COP21, right? It's about encouraging your leaders to make choices, make the right decisions for your country. And a lot of people are on board with this campaign. It's not just Trinidad and Tobago, it's not just the Caribbean, it's the entire world. And it started online, you know, you could share a picture, tell them, oh, well, we're going to do a march, or we're going to do anything, right? Another example would be, recently, I saw someone started a petition to ban hunting in Trinidad and Tobago. That started online, but that is something, they don't want to ban hunting online. There's no hunting online. They want to ban hunting in real life, right? So that's another example of something you can do. You can start petitions, you can start trends, you can start campaigns. It's really simple. The tricky thing is, though, your target audience. Now, Kemba and Jonathan would identify that people have different lives. They might care, but you know, they might be busy. Maybe they can't do stuff in the week or only on weekends. Maybe they have 5 kids, 5 kids and caring about the environment. It becomes tricky. So I think the key is in reality, you really cannot reach everybody everywhere, right? But there are lots of organizations. So what we can do is stop trying to do the same thing. So we are all involved in different organizations, but we don't do the same thing. We don't target the exact same audience. We don't try to hit the exact same cause, which is great, because it's all about the environment, but different aspects, and we're meeting different people in different places in life. So if you're trying to do something on social media to get people involved, you cannot get everybody involved, because everybody has something different going on. So try to focus on one group. Maybe you can encourage another group of people to get a different group of people involved. And that way, if we're all doing something, we will eventually reach everyone.
Sorry to just jump in before you go, but I just wanted to piggyback on your point you just said there about campaigns. And just for those of you who, at least those people who are listening and mightn't really be fully aware of what hashtags are for. That's an example of what hashtags are really supposed to serve for. When you have a campaign, like what's the one you just said?
Action 2015.
Action 2015. You see people put hashtags, but really and truly, that is what a hashtag can be used powerfully for, is to really sort of mainstream. I'm sure everyone in this room is aware of it, but a lot of other people who just hashtag me today, or I don't know, something, it's not really used for that. It's fun, but this is the real use of it. There's another campaign that came out of the Global Shapers called Shape Sustainability, and that's just another idea of something that's kind of trendy, that you can take the bus instead of driving a car and you just hashtag Shape Sustainability. That really sort of can help create this global consciousness that, like, hey, this tiny small thing I'm doing actually does make a difference. I'm part of this global group that's doing it as well. And that takes away the individual sense of, I just took the bus, but everyone else is driving and it doesn't matter. But when you do that and you realize that someone else took the bike and someone else did this, that is the sort of collective that we need to really sort of be able to make a difference. And that's the power of hashtags and campaigns.
Well, I would just like to make this specific to my school, because in our school there are lots of people who are interested in the environment, and so our environment club is growing in numbers, but then there are also a lot of people who say, what's the point? It makes no sense. It's always going to be here, because they're so ignorant of the fact that the environment is something that was given to us, and as easily as it was given, it could be taken away. And so I think that something that we do in our schools is try to make it accessible to everyone, because certain leaders in the group would go around to different classes and they would ask the different students what they would like to see in the environment club. How can they help the school to try and be a more greener school, so to speak? And so one of the practices that we're doing right now is the boxes that bring the lunches and the juice. We're taking them and we're pulling them up, and then we're carrying them down to our recycling facility, because in the past we just used to collect it and have them in a collection facility in school, and then it would be burned, so, or disposed of improperly. So this is something that we're trying to do to alleviate the problems that we have faced in the world right now.
Jeremy, if you don't mind me asking, that program you guys have at school, it's taking like lunch boxes and washing them?
Not the lunch boxes itself, it's the boxes that carry them.
Like
so
cardboard?
Like yeah, the cardboard.
Tetra Paks and
yeah, all that.
Okay. Because that just brings to mind a very important issue that we have in Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean, which is styrofoam.
Right.
And is there actually recycling for styrofoam, and how do we deal with it, and how can we, I don't know, have a campaign to not use styrofoam or something like that?
I mean, Guyana just plan to ban, officially ban styrofoam, and I've also posted that up on Facebook as well. And everybody was like, how are we going to do this, or looking forward to it, or yes, we need to have it. But I mean, one thing to have a institutionalized change, but I think we need to start accepting that we need to change as well, because it's not the banning of the item, or it's not the telling the store owners or the people that they shouldn't use it, but it's everybody cooperating. Because, for example, if they put a ban and you have a shop behind God's back, what is going to stop you from going and buy a box of whatever, with chips and this and that or whatever? So I think for us, we need to sort of start, okay, yes, it's cool to go to school with your lunch box, with your, reusable container from home. In primary school, everybody goes with packed lunches. But by the time you reach the secondary school, it's not fashionable to go to school with a lunch kit. And we all know this. We all know this here. It's not fashionable to go to school with a lunch kit. And this is some of the things that we need to change. And if it's not fashionable, then we need to look at probably redesigning school cafeteria areas where you have plates, and where you have each class wash up their dishes, or something like that. We need to really think that it's not just about banning, it's about creating facilities that will, sort of encourage us to change our behaviors. I mean, everybody is thirsty. Sometimes I run off and I don't, pack my water from home. Okay? So you don't pack your water from home. The sun is hot. We live in a tropical island. What do? Buy a bottle of water. You take it home, you fill it, you use it the next day, but then you forget, 2 days later down in the week, and then you buy another. But if there was a water dispenser somewhere, you would just drink from that water dispenser. I mean, we have to commend some of the institutions that you still go and you see the dispensers. But I mean, that should be accessible. Water should be accessible in every building, in every school, in every institution. So those kind of things will stop you from buying bottled water. We're not trying to hate on the companies, but the companies need to realize the damage they're doing to the environment. When I was doing
and trying to adapt to suit.
Exactly. When I was doing my work placement in Ghana, I actually did some research on the issues with water. And it's very easy to say, okay, ban all the bottled waters, ban all the things, especially in a country that I knew nothing about. And when I got there, I realized that the packets of water was actually doing a bigger social good that we could ever think about, because it was eradicating cholera. And then I said, this should be a brilliant idea for places like Haiti, which, has a lot of issues and whatnot. But then when you look at the environmental impact, a lot of lands for grazing cattle and agriculture was filled with plastic, and the majority of it was the plastic bottles and the plastic water bag sachets. We used to have them in Trinidad, but they phased out quickly. But what I'm trying to get at is that a lot of the companies, the government started to tax the companies to consume the cost of getting rid of waste. So they had to pay a tax on their production of plastic to work towards, so I mean, it has a lot, to consider when we're thinking about ban this or stop this or reduce the, it's a lot of effort. And I think, we need to be mindful of it, especially as young people, because sometimes, we're so passionate. I'm very passionate. And then I could be like, ban this, ban that. But then if you can't see to work, hand in hand, then, we may not get anywhere, because they will just look at us, these young people, they feel they know everything, and they don't want to think about, business and how much people my company feeds, and, the busman, the maximan, the disman, and whatever. But I think, if we look at it in a more broad sense, we can go.
Yeah, and actually on the topic of companies that do the plastic bottles and so on, they should be, in my opinion, the ones pioneering the solutions. I mean, they have funds, these companies grow, they have more and more money, they don't know what to do with their money with, they're looking for something fulfilling to do with their life. They have these funds, and then often you have a global company that can invest in other things. So Dasani and Coca-Cola and whatever might be under a global father company. And that company really and truly has the opportunity, I think, to sort of use some of those funds to think about reinvesting back in solutions, because actually recycling, for those people who are willing to, for one of better words, take on the beast, right, can actually be profitable, So it's not that they have to be unsustainable and they have to pump all their funds into it, but you know what, for now, your company thrives on selling plastic bottles and what's inside of them. But how about create the circular economy, close the loop, and have a different branch of your company or your big enterprise sort of reinvest in the technologies to handle the recycling, and have another private company that can handle the management systems or the technologies to recycle, or there's waste to energy systems which are interesting, worth looking into. They're not a die-hard answer, but nonetheless, there are these solutions to create the circular system. And we're learning more about the circular economy, and if you're producing the waste as part of your business operations, then in principle, you should be the one looking at taking that waste and putting it back in. That's what the circle is all about. So in the future, if we really say, listen, if it's eventually law that if you're producing waste, you have to take care of it, hey, just get some smart minds together and create the solution. So, I think that these companies, they should not only be responsible, but I think it's a great opportunity for them to think about their actual, if a company was to sort of pioneer that, I think that they can be the leaders. And who knows, really, reputation-wise, it can be very good for them. So it can be win-win for everyone.
So I think we have just one more question. Thank you very much. So we have 5 minutes. We can address this question briefly.
It's not really a question, it's just a message. So I echo the sentiments of each person on the need for social media and environmental awareness. Those who use social media are mainly adults with set goals and behaviors. As such, there must be an increased pressure placed on the education ministry to revise behaviors.
So do we have any thoughts on that, just briefly?
I agree. Why, to me, I got really upset after I did do environmental science in Form 6, and I realized, wait. This is not even offered in all schools. It's in some schools. It's not offered in secondary schools. In primary school, you have, I don't know if they still have it, you have something called agricultural science. When I was in primary school, I did agricultural science in standard 1, and then the teacher disappeared, and then that was the end of that. And you never heard anything about it again. And I forgot. I grew up, they teaching me maths and all these million subjects. Meanwhile, they're telling you that you need math and English to function in everyday life. Do you not need the environment to function in everyday life? Is that not why you have life? So, it only makes sense to teach us how really we could interact with it properly. It's not, like everybody said, it doesn't have to be something like, oh, it's so scary. Oh, gosh, nobody ever invite site test, boy, I can't manage. It doesn't have to be anything like that. It could be, well, all right, this is going to take a little while in terms of, because there's a whole system overhaul and everything like that. It doesn't have to be a test type subject. It could just be a learning opportunity. But, you know the government and school and, education goes.
Yeah, well, as I said before, I think that the education system should be more centered on a topic that is so global right now, which is the environment, and something that all of us have to learn about because it affects everyone. So when we see the direct link between the environment and our survival, I think we would truly appreciate how much the environment means to us, and then we would make a greater attempt to try and conserve the environment. So I think that's something that we should look forward to doing and try and implement rather sooner than later.
Okay. So my last set of comments, things that we want to include into our education curriculum. Firstly, the thing is why are trees important? Secondly, where water comes from. A lot of people, when I work with a lot of kids, they say it comes from the tap, and not understanding the whole ecosystem behind the water that comes in your tap. What is the usefulness of religion and environment? We have a lot of, ceremonies that are done in the sea, by the river, and we are a multicultural society. And one of the things that we look at climate change and disaster recovery, and say one of the things that helps societies to move forward is when you have that sort of strong community and that closeness with each other. So then if we have all these things and we neglect to sort of enforce, because I work with the Muslim youths from the mosque in, I think it's St. Joseph. And one of the parts of their mantra is that they focus on planting trees, and they believe that it sort of gives them a certain amount of enlightenment. I can't quote it, I'm not Muslim, but and being raised as Rastafarian, one of the things we do, that river and that sort of ritual. And I think, as we get more and more distant, we sort of lose the connection to the environment. So I think in terms of looking at what we should be teaching, all those basic things, where food comes from, where herbs come from, where fruits come from, where the animals live. Very often when the whole hillside burns down, people say, oh, well, the trees get back green. But then one person put a picture on Facebook last year with a burnt parrot, and everybody was like, oh, the poor parrot, what do you think burns when the forest burns? So it's mind-boggling to me that people have no clue what we lose when we have a fire or a hurricane or something like that. So for me, I just believe that we really, really need to focus on education, because we have no clue as a society what we lose. Every time we have a disaster in the ocean, a spill, flooding or whatever, we have no clue as a society what we lose. So if we have no clue, we cannot effect change. We cannot demand change. So I think we really need to look at a holistic approach to environmental education.
Well, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we are out of time. So, of course, a heartfelt thank you to all of our panelists, Kemba, Jonathan, Letitia, and Jeremy, to all of our participants, both online and offline, to our partners, and of course to our Caribbean Future Forum team. It was indeed an insightful session. I'm sure that our young persons who are tuned in, whether you're young at heart or by age, they definitely would have had a lot to take away from this session, especially in terms of what we can do at the personal level, whether it's in our school, at our jobs, at home, to really protect the environment as young persons. Of course, you can continue to follow this discussion online. Our speakers will be available to engage with us via our online discussion forum for the next week. This forum can be accessed on our website at www.caribbeanfutureforum.com. Next month, our webinar will be led by our partner, the Commonwealth Secretariat, and this webinar will give an insight into the blue economy. Of course, you can also stay in the loop with what's happening by visiting our website, liking our Facebook page, Caribbean Future Forum, and following us on Twitter at forum_Caribbean. Again, I would like to say a heartfelt thank you to all of you, and do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.